Hey, Road Warriors and Care Crew. Welcome to the Care in Motion podcast, the new home for the home health clinician. We're going to talk through stories and tips around safety, efficiency, clinical issues, and career pathways, all from the perspective of a few road warriors just like yourself to provide their insight. Our goal here is that you'll find this weekly podcast helpful, relatable, and interesting, but most importantly, wildly entertaining during your daily drive. But we were all talking. There was a fun Facebook post in one of the home health chats, and it said, "Tell your craziest stories from home health and go." And I've never seen this thing blow up quite like it did, because, as of this moment in time, there's like 160 or so stories. And I was like, you guys must have crazy stories. So we thought we might take a few minutes to just reflect on some of those craziest moments in home health that probably makes a typical day in the life for a lot of people. So I know there's stories that you guys have. I know there's some interesting ones that I'd love to read through on here and get your input. But Dan, I know you said you had a couple of things that had come straight to mind. What was that?
Yeah, so I'll get to I know I was trying to think through, and there's like so many, and there's going to be so many that come to me after I say this. But the first one that came to mind was I was a traveling therapist in California, and I was going to meet a patient for the first time, do his evaluation. I had confirmed with the patient a couple hours prior. I go and I knock, and he lives in like a small little apartment that's attached to like a bunch of other apartments. And so I go and I knock, no answer. Knock again, no answer. I call, no answer. I'm like, okay, this gentleman literally confirmed with me. I'm definitely turning the doorknob and I'm seeing what we see here. So I open the door. It's open, thank God. And there he is, actively seizing but unconscious on his bed, laying, blood coming out of his mouth onto the bed sheets, unresponsive, but and so I'm like, like I'm just like, okay, Dan, focus, let's do what you got to do. So I run over and I am just, trying to do all the things that we learn to do when you have to do, active checking to see if the airway is open and this and that. So I'm checking. He's got a heart rate and he's breathing, but he is seizing. And so I'm a man of faith. I prayed while calling 911 because I was like, so it was just one of those, like, you have to think fast. Do I do CPR? He's not appropriate for CPR. Am I making the right choice? Yes, because he's breathing. So I call 911. They come. I give them the whole rundown, and he was transferred quickly to the hospital. He had brain surgery that day, and he made it, but I never saw him after that because probably he went to rehab or something. I don't know the end result, but it was one of those situations where you feel like, it all happens in about a minute, but it's like chaos, scary, and you think to yourself after all is said and done, I don't get paid enough for this. It's like, whoa, what is happening? So that's the first thing that came to mind when I thought of one of the craziest things that I've walked in on. At least a safe story that I can tell without feeling like it's like an unsafe story to tell. But I'll let one of you guys go after that.
I think for me, I think we all have kind of a story like that, right? Because I have almost the same story of being kind of in the right place at the right time, in a sense. And I used to always say, in home health, like, no one died because they didn't get physical therapy, right? But in actuality, there's times when we've gone to see people or patients for a visit in PT, and if we weren't there, they may not have been found for another 2 days or 4 days or even a week in some cases. But I had the same thing. I was going in for an evaluation at an assisted living facility to a patient I had seen before, but I was going back to see her, and I go and get the like the aide to let me in because the door was locked. So she just opens the door and then goes, leaves. And I walk in and she has like a 2-bedroom apartment there. And I walk in and I turn left and I open the bedroom door and I just see blood like smeared all the way down the bathroom door. She's then laying like on the floor, covered in blood. Her walker is over her. I was like, it's just one of those images that you just don't ever get out of your mind, right? Same thing with you walking in and seeing your patient seize it. Just one of those things that are just never going to leave your mind. And so, of course, I checked on her. I went and got the nurse, which was nice being assisted living because you had somebody else there. I mean, this has happened to me out in the field as well, where it's just myself and calling 911. But her blood sugar ended up being 31. They were trying to like pump, just squeezing like the packs of their shoving orange juice down her mouth. I was like, oh my goodness. But so kind of that same kind of crazy, not we all have the horror house stories in a sense, but these ones I think that are just burned into your mind. I don't know, Brendan, if you have one that's kind of the same, but
I have to admit, I haven't, knock on wood, I haven't come into any houses of pure blood or craziness like that. I mean, I've been in some crazy situations and things like that, but nothing like that. I mean, when I started thinking about this, the one I went back to and we've talked about before is like safety stuff. And I saw a gun just sitting on a table as I'm in this patient's house. And I'm like, okay. And everything was a little bit off. It's actually weird because it was kind of where I grew up and everything. And I knew the area, I know the kind of population. I'm like, this is not typical. But long story short, the gentleman had some very strange hobbies and everything else, and he absolutely hated squirrels. Turns out it was a BB gun because he used to try to do his bird feeders, and the squirrels would always go inside the bird feeders, and he would try to shoot them from inside his kitchen to try to get all the squirrels, and he absolutely hated squirrels. This guy could barely walk, but he always made sure he got up his ladder and tried to fill his bird feeders. And like that's the stuff that I think we never forget. It's like, yeah, I can't walk, but I'm gonna do this for my pet or do this. You know what I mean? It's like some of the things that people do or say they have to do. You're like, and how did you do that? Because I'm a little confused. Like you just gonna do 4 sit-to-stands, but yet you just climbed the ladder and did this.
Your home exercise program is going to be to climb the ladder and shoot 4 squirrels a day.
Well, that was like one of my goals, right? At the end, like, we want to be, specific. Our SMART goals, right? So it was a specific task that he wanted to be able to do was to take his ladder, put his bird feed in the bird feeder, and shoot squirrels to protect his things. So I learned a lot about birds that time. I'll just say that, but it was definitely interesting every time I walked in, and I had a little panic attack when the gun was just sitting there because. For me, I'm not familiar with weapons as much, right? And at the end of the day, I don't have a history or I've never been a hunter. And I'm like, it looked like a real weapon to me. It looked like some kind of small rifle or something. And then long story short, we had to call and make sure it was okay and everything else. But then, he explained to me the next time, oh, yeah, it was a BB gun. You should have just asked me. I'm like, I'm not asking anybody anything. If I see a gun, like, I'm getting out of there. So.
So not squirrels, but one of the posts says that with no more explanation than this: bed bugs, cockroaches, giant spiders, snakes, more snakes. Patient's feces fell out of their depends onto my suede boot. Was attacked by a patient's domestic geese. Bit by a cat. Bit by a dog. I'm like, hopefully that wasn't one day.
It's amazing how many different animals you see in patient's home. I mean, there's turtles and goats, and I had somebody with a mini horse that would just kind of walk around their property and be like, oh, just make sure you watch out for the mini horse before you come in the front door. She's okay. She won't bite. I'm like, okay.
There's probably all kinds of animal stories. What are you gonna say, Dan?
No, I was just gonna say, as far as the bugs go, I think probably all of us have bug stories, but I've got the bed bugs. I mean, cockroaches I'm scared of to this day. Bed bugs I'm scared of to this day. we have this policy where if someone has bed bugs, you have to have the patient have it sprayed, and then they have to like show you the notification that it's been sprayed. And that was all said and done, and I still went with my Tyvek suit, which makes, if you don't know what that is, look like a space suit. And I walk in, and I'm like, "So you were sprayed?" He's like, "Yeah." Now this is an apartment building, so it's like if he was sprayed, and like most of the building was sprayed, but like one portion wasn't sprayed, well, and they have visitors, and they walk down to see their patient, they carry them, bed bugs from place to place. So I'm like, okay, well, so you're all set. And so we go for a walk in the hall. I'm like, nope, you're not all set. There's one on your shoulder. And I literally was like, that was so disgusting. You can I'll never forget what they look like. They're these little red translucent bodies. I'm like, oh my gosh.
They're red because they have blood in them. You're like, oh my God.
Have any of you guys watched your patient take their last breath?
No.
So no, I've had two near though. I had one where, similar to what you walked in on, Dan, I had a patient who she kept passing out, and meanwhile her stepson and her husband or boyfriend were sitting on the couch. I'm like, can one of you guys call 911? They're like, why, is everything okay? I'm like, she keeps passing out. Like, do you guys not realize what's going on here?
Mm-hmm.
And long story short, she ended up getting the help she needed, and the hospital's right around the corner. But sad story, she ended up actually passing away from something else that we didn't know about. They found out later on.
So passed away in the hospital after you sent her?
Yeah,
So
unfortunately.
you were in the right place at the right time. Yeah.
And then the other one I had was, it was kind of twofold. I saw this woman, and she's like, my tongue feels weird, and this is the second time I ever saw her. And it was July 3rd. And you guys know, if you ever work July 3rd, you're not getting many doctors at that time. So called the doctor, somehow got through. It was like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm like, all right, it's my lucky day. I said, hey, so Mrs. So and so is doing okay, but her vitals are stable. She's just very lethargic, not like her normal giddy self that I've met so far. What do you want me to do? And well, you're there. You tell me what to do. I'm like, well, you've been seeing her for, as she says, the past 10 years. Like, give me some advice here. Well, you do whatever you want. Okay. So I sent her to the hospital. About to have massive stroke. Learned that later on when I saw her the second time around. She goes, you're my savior. You saved my life. She goes, I was about to have massive stroke. All this being said, I called her son, and her son's in Maryland. And at the time, he's like, yeah, I'm in Maryland. I can't make it back. Just let her sleep it off. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I'm like, this is not an option. I'm like, I know you're probably down there for the holiday. I'm like, call somebody else and get somebody else here. I said, otherwise, I'm calling 911. And I'm like, she needs to go. Long story short, they got a relative to come and take her. But yeah, I found out, I think it was about 6 months to a year later, she came back on caseload. And she's like, oh my God, you saved my life. Thank you. But I cannot imagine what you just spoke of. I haven't experienced, and I don't know how I would do that.
So I'll just give you the 2-minute lowdown. So this is my only time I've ever experienced this. So I just met this gentleman like 2 days prior for his evaluation, and he lived in an assisted living. Thank God, because there were other people. So, and I don't go to ALFs a lot at all, but I happened to. And so I walk in the second time, and I check in with the nurse, and the nurse is actually in the room, and he looked super, super drowsy. His eyes were not open, and but he was breathing, and he was just like super like not alert, kind of like in and out of like eyes open, eyes closed, and I hadn't worked with him, thankfully, so I didn't do any exercises again, thankfully, because it's like when you're in this type of situation, like did I do something wrong? No.
Right.
I was in the middle of taking his vitals, and I'm like, no, like this is not like definitely we are not. And I'm watching him breathe, and I'm like, no, like this is definitely. And he was late 80s, not in good health, but I call the nurses in, and they're all like trying to figure out what to do, and they're like, I'm like, I think he's taking his last breaths like right now. That is what and he was not a code, it was DNR, I believe. And it was just surreal. It was surreal because I've never seen that before. There was no stopping it. It happened all very, very quickly. And I told him the whole deal. I'm like, listen, this is all that happened. It was just, I've been here for like 3 minutes. Like, the nurse was just here. And it's, yeah, it was just, you'll never forget that type of thing. Cause, you know, for a minute you're just like, is there anything I could have done? And you're like, no, like, this all was like so fast. And so
That's tough.
it was wild. It was wild.
Yeah.
So I called my boss and I'm like, blah, 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 blah. Like, oh my gosh, you know?
Oh,
Yeah, that's super tough.
Mhm.
And then you have to go to your next patient like nothing happened.
I know. I know.
So I
Why
haven't
are
had
you late?
that damn, but
Why are
have
you
any
late?
of you guys been in an active shooter situation? Active crime scene? So one time I pulled all my patients and
Is that like a Tuesday in Philly, or is that?
it's like a probably Wednesday, and me, I'm wearing my bright orange polos. It's summertime. I got my bright Nikes on and everything. I stick out like a sore thumb, and I'm sitting there, and some cops are on a corner store. Maybe something happened. Someone stole something, whatever. Well, start walking down the street, not realizing, and nobody stops me. No one says anything to me. Then I'm getting yelled at by probably the biggest person I see in SWAT gear ever. And he's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Going to see my patient?" He's like, "No, you're not. Go back up the street." Meanwhile, my patient, she calls the captain over from the police squad and says, "Hey, that's my physical therapist. He needs to come see me today." I'm like, "What is going on?" So meanwhile, the guy that just yelled at me, right? The sergeant sends him up and he's like, "Yo, go and get that guy, keep him behind you, and get him in this house." So meanwhile, I'm using him as a shield. Thankfully, he's a pretty big dude, and I can actually like stay behind him. And then, long story short, he goes, "All right, you stay in this house until we say the coast is clear." I'm like, "Can you just tell me what's going on right now?" He's like, "Oh, someone got shot, and we don't know if the shooter's still in the area or not." I'm like,
Oh,
"Awesome."
my
I'm
God.
like, "This is cool." And I'm like, "So why did my patient bring me down here?" I'm like, I should just go home now. Like, I
Yeah,
need to
yeah.
go home now.
Oh
She's
man.
like, if I miss PT every time there was an active shooter in my neighborhood, I'd miss
Yeah.
half my appointments.
Pretty much.
She's like, there might be an active shooter, but my knee still hurts there, buddy.
She's like, "Yeah, they could be in the back of my house. I don't know. I heard some banging or something, but it's okay. We'll still get our PT in."
Here's a fun one. We have a nudist community here, and I had a couple of patients. They don't have anything to hide. I never sit there, even if they offer me to sit down during the session.
it's amazing
In
how
your
many
face.
people just like to be naked or in their briefs.
Yep.
I'm like, okay, it's your home though. They have that right. But
Oh my gosh.
They're
Yeah,
just
here's
hanging
a
out.
male patient came to the door to let me in, fully naked and drunk.
Oh my gosh.
I've had that a few times. Have you guys had people that are drunk when they answer the door?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I'm just
I,
like, we're not doing therapy today. And I'm
yeah,
like, we need to take care of this today. I'm like, I'm gonna try back next week if it's like the end of the week or whatever. And then if it's a pattern, like there's been one time where I had to stop because the guy was, he was a raging alcoholic and no one knew it, and it became very apparent. But
yeah. It's like,
or that's their
yeah.
reason for PT referral falls because of alcohol.
yeah,
Like, well, I can't quite fix that.
Exactly. What am I gonna do here to help
that's a
you? Not
situational
really.
thing right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was one time I had to call the primary though and say that to them. Like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "He keeps falling because he's drinking all the time." And I'm like, "That's the reason why he keeps having falls." They're like, "Oh, I thought he had." I'm like, "No, he has nothing else wrong with him besides for the fact that he can't put a can down." I'm like, "That's his
Mhm.
issue."
Yeah. Have you ever had any uncomfortable situations where you are kind of getting hit on? I've had that. I've had someone. I was like sitting right next to this, and she wasn't that old of a woman, and I was seeing her for whatever it was. I go to take her blood pressure, and and she's like, "You look like you work out," and she touched my thigh. I was like, "Lord help me."
Oh,
Um,
Oh, I got a phone call. I gotta
And
go.
and so like it was like one of those, like it happened so fast, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna literally say nothing right now because I'm just getting to know this person at evaluation. I go back a second time. I'm doing balance training. She purposefully falls backwards into me and touches my my abdominals, and I'm like, all right, that's it. That was strike two. We are no longer coming back. We are getting someone else, a female, to come explain it to my, boss. I'm like, oh my goodness, so uncomfortable.
I'll get that with like in transfers, there'll be like a low butt grab. And you're like, oh no.
No.
Or people asking you like, oh, you can stay and like have a drink with me, or commenting on my appearance, or how my clothes are fitting. So it shouldn't just be.
I had a patient that took it upon herself to give my phone number to one of her family members.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's like, I don't think he's married, so you should call him. So I get this random phone call the one day, and it's from this sister, and she's like, I know you're really fit and everything, and into exercise. I think she'd be right up your alley. She was in the army, but she's on dialysis. I'm like, what? I'm like, how? I'm like, no. I'm like, no. I'm like, you're my patient. I'm like, thank you for looking out for me. Like, God bless you. But at the end of the day, like, I will find someone. And I'm like, and this was when obviously I wasn't married at the time. But I'm like, all right, I'm gonna start putting a ring on my finger just to pretend like I'm married now, because I'm like, I'm done with this stuff. Like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
But patients, they try to be matchmaker for you and everything else. Or my favorite is you should meet my granddaughter, and they have the dementia, or my grandson, and it's like, well, they're married with 2 kids. like what are you trying to do here?
They do like to play matchmaker with the grandkids.
Yep.
I lost my I imagine you guys kept going. I lost my my whole computer practically shut down. So I missed whatever that amazing last story was, but I assume that
We talk about being hit on by our patients, or being set up on dates by our patients, giving it to family members.
I wonder if anybody's ever I wonder if that's ever been actually successful.
Highly doubt it.
So Lisa, what else? I know you said that you've had a couple of other crazy things happen to you out there. I remember in your podcast you'd shared some things.
Oh man, I mean, there's been so many. I will say that one that I just told of, when I walked into my patient in the ALF with all the blood everywhere. I went to do an eval right after, and then went to my next evaluation, who she was doing fine. And we got up, her vitals were okay, and we were getting up and walking to the bathroom, and we're like 10 steps from the toilet. And she just starts, her whole body, half side of her body starts to kind of go limp. And I'm like, oh crap. Like, it's still an ALF, but it's still just me in there.
Yeah.
Like, I need to get you somehow to getting to sit those extra 5 feet to get on the toilet as you're having like a stroke on me right now, and get her sat down. Nice to be in an ALF, get the staff to come in, call 911 for the second time that day within a matter of an hour. And at that time, we would send out emails to the team of like, hey, 911 called on this person. So you update the team. And I sent out my first email, did my eval, came out to do this next eval, sent 911, sent out another email. And people are like, Lisa, you should probably just go home. You need to stop. But it's amazing how, like, I'll go months without calling 911, and then I'll have 2 or 3 in a week or 2. I'm like,
how it goes.
It's like waves. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And then when you're like right now, we probably all just jinx ourselves. We're like, oh yeah, everything's smooth sailing right now. And then watch all of us tomorrow be like, Joke's on
So,
me. Look at this. Look what's happening now.
Yeah, I had to call last week, 911. So I think it should be good for a little bit. But I was on hold for 3 rounds for 911. I was like, really? Or
whoa.
kept like ringing, and then they're answering. It was like, thank you for calling the fire department or whatever, or calling emergency services. So finally, after 3 rounds, got them on the phone. They were on the phone for like 5 minutes. Like, we'll send someone to you. 25 minutes later,
Oh
they
my
showed up.
gosh. What?
And I was like, well, I'm really glad this wasn't like a really bad emergency, like it was it wasn't needed. This patient has gone to the ER like 6 times in the last couple of weeks. But I'm like, 25 minutes.
Yeah.
That was very long. That's the longest I've ever had. Usually it's like 7 to 8 from when the time I call to when they arrive. And
Are you in an urban area or?
Yeah,
or,
city. Yeah.
Yeah.
On the outskirts, but
Yeah.
I guess they've just
I
been
swear,
really.
I was just going to say, like, the past bunch of times I've called 911, I swear they've been there in like 5 minutes or less. It's because I'm in a city and I guess it's just the right timing. But yeah, 25 minutes is kind of like crazy. You could have brought them to the hospital.
But
Oh, yeah.
I've had that too, Lisa. I mean,
Really?
yeah, I work in a city, and like the patient, she had an elevated BP, but it wasn't anything crazy, but it was significant enough there. I'm like, hey, like you've been up. The nurse saw you earlier. She told me to check you again when I came in, which I was going to do anyway, and you're still elevated. I'm like, and her daughter's there. I'm like, you're going to the hospital, and Laura's like, but I'm like, she's going to the hospital. I'm like, her heart rate's been high for so long. Like, we don't know if she's about to have a stroke or anything else. Like, I can't do any tests. She has to get checked out. 30 minutes later, they got there. And I'm like, and then like, they're just casually going about. Like, I gave them everything. And I'm like, can I leave? And like, it's probably like 45 minutes later, they finally take her. I'm like, you guys are in such a rush. I love it. Like, I love seeing it.
Yeah.
But
Lord.
it's crazy.
I had a patient. I walked in, her BP, and it was like one of those things where I had to take it 3 times, and it was so elevated every time. It was 200 over 110.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, let me just make sure. I'm like, okay. I call the doctor. I'm not getting in touch with the doctor, but I'm like, I'm calling. I had to call 911. There were not symptoms, but that was so elevated, and I couldn't get a hold of the doctor. And she ended up going to the hospital and dying. She did not come home. And I will never forget that, because it was like one of those, like, in home health, you learn pretty quickly, like, if I'm going to leave this home and wonder if I should have called and be nervous that I didn't call, you call 911. Like, don't like it, because we get guidance like, well, definitely call the PCP first. If it's one of those, like, okay, the borderline, like 150 over 90 blood pressure, and it's like, listen, we see this not all that infrequently. I'm not going to panic. I'm going to call the PCP, notify them, blah blah blah. But it was so elevated. Plus, she wasn't like really herself. She was weak to begin with. And I'm like, we're not playing here. Dana was not playing. So, one of those things where you just can't. You got to go with your gut. And
Well,
if you're gonna lose, go ahead.
Yeah, but even if they're going to get upset with you, like I've stepped out of a house and called, I'll let them refuse to care rather than me not calling. You know what I mean? Because at least I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, and we're humans too, right? There's a physical, mental, emotional toll with everything that we do, and we go in day out. So at the end of the day, if I at least leave there knowing what I got to do, and I think we've all seen it enough where your gut knows. I think that's what you're leading to, right? Is your gut. If it says, "Hey, call," you're probably thinking for good reason. You might not know everything, but then lo and behold, they get to the hospital, and you're like, "Oh shit! Like this is everything that happened there." You know?
Yeah.
Well, this is what we've been told, and what I go on is like, if they have abnormal vitals or you're thinking they need to go 911 and the patient's saying, no, I don't want to go, and they're refusing, you're still calling if you think it's your judgment to do
Absolutely.
it, because
Us too.
we don't have any forms to sign that say they're going against our medical advice. 911, they do. EMS does.
Yep.
They have a form the patient can sign saying, I'm refusing this medical advice. And we've kind of transferred the buck in a sense of, hey, it's off of us. Like, we did our due diligence. if we don't do anything and their blood pressure is 200 over 110, I don't do anything, and that person has a stroke when I leave, that's
Right.
on me. And
That's
I don't
on
want it to be on me.
No,
Right.
no, absolutely, 100%. And we have to get past the whole, listen, I don't want to hurt your feelings. No. That's not what this is about. This is an obligation I have to call because there is something going on. And you are welcome to turn them away if you truly don't want care, but I have to call. And if I need to do that from the hallway, then I'll do that or whatever, or step out for 2 seconds if they're going to start throwing, rocks at me.
I mean, today I talked to the wife, and because my patient fell, he's been, recovering from a stroke, and he's been making great progress. But he is in his 80s. He's a little bit slower moving. He has still some deficits there, and he had a busy week. He had 2 back-to-back doctors, Monday, Tuesday, back-to-back, which killer for him, right? He was exhausted. And the second one, he came home. They just got in the house. He was, like, I think, trying to go to his chair, fell over, hit his head. So she had a family friend who's a doctor come and check him out, but and she used to work as like an aide in healthcare. But then like today, everybody from my team, the OT, the PT, the speech, and the nurse all saw him. Everyone tried to call the family PCP, no answer. She's like, I haven't heard back from him. I'm like, yeah, I'm like, he's on a blood thinner. You still need to go get him checked out. I'm like, he needs to still get a CT scan. He hit his head. We don't want to make sure there's no internal bleeding, things like that. And she was compliant and said, yeah, I'm going to go as soon as my friend gets here. And, she followed up with me later and said that they went. But, we don't always get that option. I mean, I've had people straight up refuse me or be like, no, because like, I'm not sitting there for 4 hours or I'm not sitting in. And I understand, I'm human too. And I don't want to sit there and waste your time. But at the end of the day, like, I sometimes have to shoot straight with them. I'm like, hey, it's either this or you're dead tomorrow, possibly. I'm like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, just from what I'm seeing, I'm like, I'm not trying to be grave or anything. I'm like, but you have to make your choice here, and I'm like, be comfortable with whatever you're doing here. And I'm like, you either make the call, or I make the call, or you make the decision to get there somehow, or I'm making the decision for
Yeah.
you. And I mean, you just have to stick to it, and document like they always say, right at the end of the day. But it's definitely tough decisions. When you said, Dan, originally that you went in the house, that's the thing that freaks me out the most now. Especially when people say to me, hey, just announce yourself and come in. I'm like,
Yeah.
I hate this so much
Yeah.
because I'm
I
like,
know.
I'd rather someone answer the door or ring the bell or you come to the door. I'm like, because I don't know what I'm walking into. And I'm like, do I
100%.
really want to be walking into that situation? And I'm like,
I fully agree. The reason I did it in that particular case is because they had confirmed with me like 2 hours prior. I'm like, this ain't right,
Yeah.
But there was one time where there's a lot of road noise. Again, I didn't know the person. I was getting there for the first time. This was not cool. A lot of road noise, and I confirmed with them. I knocked. No, so I decided to crack the door, and I go in, and there's a dude standing right there. He's like, you cannot just walk in here. I would have about shot you. I'm like, I can't hear anything. I got defensive. I can't hear anything back here. I'm like, I literally spoke with your wife like an hour ago. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? This is where I'm at. Again, you don't pay me freaking enough. Lord help me.
Have you ever walked into the wrong house or knocked on the wrong house?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
I have.
Yeah.
Who hasn't?
Like I'll put my fat fingers, type it in the address in the GPS, and I put one number off, and I haven't been there before. Knock in like, hey, I'm here, and they're like, who are you?
The best was no one answered the door that I was at, and I was calling the patient, and she's like, yeah, I'm at my door. I don't see you. And then she pokes her head around the corner. And she goes, oh, you're 3 doors down. I'm like, oh, I was close.
Oh my God.
But those situations turn scary.
Crazy caregivers. There's one in here. I had a daughter stood up and shouted at me. She was heated, telling me she couldn't believe I was just now evaluating her mom 3 weeks after surgery. She wanted to fight me outside. Like
a few days ago, I posted a repost of a reel that I did called "The Crazy Caregiver," and it was based off of a true story. And I have to be careful with no one's gonna know who this is, but it was like fit every definition of crazy. Like her hair was just like pow, like just she was, just makeup everywhere and taking care of my patient and like constantly talking like with like like she was on medication. And one day I was leaving. She's like, "You have kids?" I'm like, "Yeah, I've got kids." She's like, "Oh, if you need a babysitter, like a great babysitter, I can take care of your kid. Like, just call me up." I'm like, "I can assure you, I will never, ever do that. But thank you so much." I'm just like, what is happening right now?
You're like, stay away from, don't even talk about my kids or my family. Like, I'm nervous now.
I think the worst is sometimes caregivers, it's not even on like family members. It's sometimes like a person who's like really attached to this person. And like I've had caregivers like get in my face, like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "What I'm supposed to do." I'm like, "If you think you know better than me, then please by all means." And like I will step out and I'm like, I will no longer be back for physical therapy at this point in time. I'm like, I'm not trying to be rude, but you're telling me how to do my job at the end of the day. And it's like, I went to school for a pretty long time. I've been doing this for a couple of years, just a few, just I think I know what I'm doing. And, I think if you're a new grad, that can be very earth shattering. You definitely will be like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. But I mean, especially as we've been in long enough, I don't know about you guys, but if it gets to the point, I'm just like, it's not, the people that want to be helped are going to, respond to you, right? The people that are not want to be helped, you're going to have these problems. They're going to, so it's like, they obviously don't want help for some reason. You know what? I'll go get another patient from my scheduler
Yeah.
and keep moving on about my day,
Yeah. As I've
It's
gotten
sad,
older,
but
I have an easier time having those conversations at this point where I'm just like, listen, listen,
yeah.
like you didn't answer the phone 3 times in a row. Here I am. Like, truly, what are your goals? Like, do you really want, just do you really want to have this? And they're like, I'm like, yeah. So let's not. You don't want
I've
it.
felt in that same way as you've been doing it for a while of, I'm not going to fight as hard as I did for somebody that really doesn't really want it,
Yeah.
and then not to put the PTA through that of
Yeah.
they're trying out, they're getting missed visits, they're getting phone calls ignored, they're having this patient on their schedule taking up a spot when somebody else that could really want it and need it is now not getting seen, right? And saying, I don't, like, if you don't want PT, like, it's no skin off my back. I don't care. If you
Right.
don't want it, it's not going to help me.
Yeah.
It's going
You are
to
not hurting my feelings.
yeah,
Exactly.
it doesn't hurt my feelings. If you want me to just give you some exercises and it's an eval only, no problem.
Yeah. Well, there's a ton of stories in here and a ton of stories that you guys have, and I can only imagine just every time you open a door, it's probably something completely. It's a new adventure. So
Oh yeah.
definitely.
I mean, I think the best is food. I'm sure you guys will have food stories. I had one couple, no matter when I came, the wife always tried to feed me and like forced me to sit there and like try it. I'm like,
Mm.
no.
Yeah.
Reminds me of
No.
the wedding singer with the meatballs. Remember the
Yeah.
meatballs?
Yeah.
I'm just like, no.
Yeah.
Next time we see you, you'll have like spaghetti sauce all over your face.
Pretty much.
Well, thanks you guys as usual. Wonderful perspectives, great stories. I'm sure everybody out there's got dozens or more of their own stories. So it's I'm sure a bit cathartic just to know that everybody's kind of dealing with the same stuff. So once again, another fun session with you guys. And until next week, everybody have a wonderful week ahead of you, and maybe share some of your stories too. So, but have a good one. Have a great week. Talk to you guys soon.
Thanks. Have a good one.